So elementary students solve subtraction problems in many different ways depending on their grade level. Today I will show you 3 of these strategies for solving the problem 204 minus 89. The first strategy will be for second grade. Second grade students can use the counting up on a number line, and this is what it looks like. The students would start with 89 and count up to 204. To start, the student would find 89 on the number line. Next, the student would add 1 to the 89 to make 90. This is represented by a jump, plus 1 to 90. My jump is small because it is just a plus 1. And also, if you look at the way my arrow is going, it's going to the right, which signifies that it's increasing in total. This also makes it easier to begin adding larger numbers, as students would only have to add the 0 in the ones place. Next, the student would add 100 to the 90 to make 190. So they would draw a big arrow or a big jump, and they're adding 100. The students would find that they are still not at 204, so they would continue to count up. The student may add 10 to the 190 to make 200. Plus 10, 200. Finally, the student would add the remaining 4, since this is the amount that will make the 204. The student would then go back to the number line and add up the places where they jumped. They would add these 4 numbers together. So 100 plus 10 plus 4 plus 1 equals 115, which is their answer. The second strategy to be used will be for third grade. Third grade students use the expanded form to solve subtraction problems, and this is what it looks like. First, a student would write out the problem with 204 on top, as it is the bigger number of the two, leading to 89 underneath of it. The student would line up the 89 underneath the tens and one places, as those are the values it encompasses. As soon as the student starts to solve the problem, they would notice that they cannot take away 9 from 4. Due to this, the student may begin to expand the two numbers. 204 would decompose into 200 plus 0 plus 4. The 2 is in the hundreds place, so it represents 200. There's a 0 in the tens place, so the student would just write 0. And the 4 is in the ones place, so it would just be represented by 4. Looking at the 89, the student would notice that there is no hundreds, so they might write 0. Then looking at the 8 in the tens place, this would be represented with an 80. And finally, the 9 in the ones place would be represented as a 9. Since we are subtracting the number 89, or 80 plus 9, the student may want to write the minus signs instead of plus to remind them they are not adding. The student would see that they still have the same issue, as they cannot subtract a larger number from a smaller one, or that's what they're told. The student would then look to the next place value to their left, which unfortunately is 0, and they could not regroup using no number at all. Therefore, the student would have to look at the hundreds place and find 200. In order to regroup, the student would take 100 from the 200, leaving 100 there in the 100s place. They would place this 100 in the tens place, as this is the next place value over. However, this does not solve the problem in the ones place yet. Because of this, the student would have to take a tens from the 100, leaving 90 in the tens place. This 10 that was taken or regrouped from the tens place would be given to the ones place and added to the 4 to make 14. The student would see that they can now take away 9 from 14. The student would solve the problem by doing 14 minus 9, which is 5, and then move on to the tens place of 90 minus 80, which is 10, and then once more moving over to the 100s place, which is 100 minus 0, which is 100. So the students would be left with 100 plus 10 plus 5, which equals 115. The final strategy would be used for fourth grade. Fourth grade students can use the standard algorithm to solve the problem using base 10 manipulatives, and this is what it would look like. So first, the student would want to take the manipulatives of 204 and lay them out. When they decompose 204, they are that would be represented as two flats to represent the 200. There are no rods, so since there's a 0 the tens place, and 4 little cubes to represent 4 ones. Since this is a subtraction problem, students do not need to make manipulatives for 89, as they are subtracting or taking that away from the 204. Students will start in the ones, as this is where they are taught to begin to solve a subtraction problem. In this problem, the student only has 4 little cubes, or 4 ones, and they need to take 9 away. Since 9 is larger than 4, a student will realize this and go into the next grouping of tens to regroup. In the tens place, there are no rods, which means that in the tens place, there would be a 0. The student would have to move to the next place value, to the hundreds place, so they're the 2 flats, in order to be able to regroup. So luckily, there are 2 flats, so the student will be able to take 1 flat, which is equal to 100, and regroup it into 10 rods or 10 tens. So we're regrouping. Okay. If you look at our standard algorithm, this action of regrouping will be represented by, so we, oopsie. Oh no. There we go. So this is represented, so we're at our hundreds place now, and we're taking 1 away. So we're left with 1 here, and we're giving it to our tens place. So, since after this, the student would take the 10 rods and move it to the tens place, which we have done right here. These are our tens place values. So like I said, this was written over the tens place in the standard algorithm. So now the student would realize that they're still not done yet, as they need to take 1 rod to give it to the ones place in order to start subtracting. So this will be given to, this rod is given to the ones place and turned into 10 little cubes and added to the 4 already. Now that the student has added the 10 little cubes to the already 4 cubes they were given to the problem in a standard algorithm, this would be represented by regrouping one of the tens to the ones place. So the student would cross out the 10 and write 9 as they're taking away one of the tens and regrouping it to the ones. So they're adding the 10 to make 14. So now we can start to solve. So when looking at the ones place, when a student takes away 9 little cubes from 14, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they are left with 5 little cubes. So next they would move over to the tens place, where they would take away 8 rods from the 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which leaves only 1 rod. And finally, the student would move over to the hundreds place, where they would find no 100s need to be taken away from the 1 flat that's already there. So therefore, there would be 1 flat. So the student would put this together and find that they have 100 plus 10 plus 5, which equals 115. When we look at our standard algorithm, we would start to solve. So 14 minus 9 is 5. 9 minus 8 is 1, and 1 minus 0 equals 1 also. And we have the same answer in both, 115. So when we look back at the problem of 204 minus 89, we can see that there are multiple ways to solve this problem. Starting in 2nd grade, students would have the ability to use a number line to solve the problem. Next, in 3rd grade, students move up a step where they were expanding the problem into hundreds, tens, and ones. And then finally in 4th grade, we saw students using a standard algorithm, which they can use the manipulatives and solve the problem with regrouping through the different place values.